given additional information, so they've amplified the idea of being ugly inside and out. So well done if you picked up on that. So what we're going to do is we are going to have a go at writing our own example, okay? So this was my first example here. So it felt like we were in hell. Bombs ignited the sky like fireworks, raining down its massive destruction onto the dying world below. Flashes of fire ripped through the streets, scorching anything within its fiery grasp. So just reading that little extract there, I wonder, what word do you think is repeated to give the full effect of this description? Has anyone pinpointed what it is that I'm honing in on through my repetition? Oh, okay, well, let's see if you're right. So I've got bombs ignited the sky like fireworks. Flashes of fire ripped through the streets, scorching anything within its fiery grasp. So here I'm relating fire and burning together. So one thing that I'm going to do here is we're going to look for some synonyms. So rather than repeating the same word, I've now picked something I can see. So I can see burning. But rather than repeating the word burning throughout my entire piece of writing, I'm going to use my synonyms for this one, okay? So what I want you to do is pause the video and jot down any of the synonyms that you... Synonyms? Oh, synonyms. No, Miss Humphrey doesn't like cinnamon. Synonyms for burning or fire that we could potentially include in our writing. So pause the video and see if you can jot down some ideas. Okay, I came up with a few of my own. It's got blazing, flaming, flickering, smouldering, flaring, glowing, red hot, raging, and searing, blistering, and roaring. So that's my little vocabulary bank here that I'm going to use for my piece of writing. So what we're going to do now is I have added an additional part to my sentence, okay? So I put buildings that once stood tall as skyscrapers began to falter. The searing flames from the bombs had burnt the wooden beams to smoky embers, causing them to collapse to a pile of smouldering rubble. Okay. So the skills that I've used here, so I've decided to pick one or two of these words that are on here. Okay, so these are my adjectives that I've got and described. Now I've included a simile here. So this stood tall as skyscrapers. I've got my as, I've got my simile. But then I've included a colon here. Why have I included a colon? Because we looked at this in yesterday's lesson. Good, so it's to give some additional information. So they stood once as tall as skyscrapers. Now I need to give a reason as to why they don't, because it said they once stood tall, so now they're not tall anymore. So I need to give some additional information as to why. So I'm going to look at my vocab words here. So I use searing flames from the bombs had burnt the wooden beams to smoky embers. So embers is almost that last bit of the fire. When a fire goes out, you see all those crispy bits of red and orange. Cause them to collapse into a pile of smouldering rubble. Now, when something smoulders, it's almost when it smokes. Okay, so when something's very hot and it still smokes. Okay. So what I would like you to do now is these are the first two sentences that we've written using some of the adjectives that you've come up with. Okay, and what I would like to do now is I would like you to write an additional sentence on the end of this. And it needs to include a verb opener, okay, and we looked at this yesterday. It needs to include the word blistering and raging, so our two adjectives we're going to use to amplify. So obviously these are our synonyms to our burning, and it must include a relative clause, okay. So I want you to pause the video, and on the sheet that you've got at home, you've got the first sentence, so you can either copy down the second sentence that I wrote, or you can have a go at writing your own, and then I want you to write a third sentence on the end, okay. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, well, this was my example that I came up with. So, engulfing the robust army tank, the raging flames licked up the sides and into all the cracks and crevices, blistering the paint to a mere pile of ash. So, I'm going to check this against my toolkit now. Have I used all four things that I wanted to include? So, I've got engulfing the robust army tank. Well, yes. I've got a verb opener. To engulf something means to wrap around. So I've got engulfing the robust army tank. I've included the word raging. So I've got the raging flames. And then I've added something else in here. It says licked up the sides. What skill have I used there? I've used personification. Same for raging flames. Raging is a human emotion. Okay, flames don't rage, they don't have anger in them. So not only have I used a word there, a synonym for burning of raging, and using it as personification, but I've also said the flames licked up the sides. It doesn't have a tongue, it can't lick. But the idea of it licking means it goes all the way up. Okay, so it almost does, it licks the side. So I've included personification there. Then I've also got my word blistering. So when it blisters the paint, so imagine what a blister does. When it's on your skin, it's like a raised bump, isn't it? And that idea of the fire blistering the paint means it's bubbled all of the paint and then he's burnt it into a pile of ash. So I look forward to having a look at that sentence that you guys have written when you send it in to me. So your task for today is you're going to write a setting description about an element from the war that the gentleman in our story might have experienced. So it could be his time in the trenches. It could be his time out on the battlefields, a bit like No Man's Land. It could be that he's in a plane, okay, or an experience of someone fighting up in the fighter jet planes. Could be on the ground in a town or a city, or it could even be in the medic's tent, because we know he's a medic. So he's going to be somewhere where he might be, performing some medical procedures. Now, your paragraph should contain one feature of the amplification. So it could be like our first paragraph, where we repeated the same word, but you could have it so that you've got 2 or 3 words that repeated more than once. Or it could be repetition of words where you use the synonyms, okay, like the example that I've just done with the fire and the burning, okay? So pick one of the sentences that you looked at the beginning and see if you can start thinking of some words. Now, I have sent home a word bank that might be able to help sort of jog your memory on some ideas that you could pick up on. Now, for those of you that might struggle with this, I suggest that you write your paragraph about time in the trenches. So a bit like the very first paragraph that was on this PowerPoint, which you also have an example of sent home to you. Now, the beginning example that you've got is there to help you, but I want you to pick a different word to focus on, okay? So see if you can think of some different skills that you might be able to include, okay? And then for those of you that need more of a challenge, your paragraph must contain more than one example. So you might find that you repeat a choice of a word. It could be 2 words that you repeat throughout, but then you might want to find that you amplify another word with different synonyms, okay? So you've got all 3 of my examples on this PowerPoint for you to have a look at. So it's up to you to pick as to which one you think is going to be more appropriate for you, okay? So have a go writing your character descriptions or your setting descriptions. Use the toolkit sent home. You might want to create yourself a word bank of synonyms if you're going to focus on a specific word. And you might be able to find those synonyms if you type it into Google and have a look online, okay? So have a go at those, and I look forward to seeing what you guys have written when you send those in at the end of the week, okay? Good luck, Year 5.